I'm Cora, 28 years old, standing at my cousin's wedding with a glass of champagne in hand. After being disowned by my parents for the unforgivable crime of being born a girl, I never expected to see them again. Yet here they are approaching me after 10 years of silence, with fake smiles asking me to fund this extravagant celebration. The words they spoke next shattered any illusion of reconciliation, but my response left the entire room in tears. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button to join me on this journey of standing up for myself after a lifetime of rejection. My birth was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it was a disappointment. My father, Thomas Wilson, had already endured the tragedy of having two daughters, Sarah and Amanda, before me. When the doctor announced it's a girl, his face fell in a way that nurses still remembered years later. My mother, Elizabeth, tried to mask her disappointment, but the tension in our home was palpable even in my earliest memories. I was born into a traditional American family where lineage and family name were everything. My father's parents, especially grandfather Wilson, constantly reminded him of his duty to produce a male heir. Every family gathering became an opportunity to question when they would finally get a grandson. This pressure shaped our family dynamic in ways I wouldn't fully understand until much later. By the time I was 3, I had already sensed something was off. While my parents provided materially for us, there was an emotional distance I couldn't comprehend. My early memories include trying desperately to climb onto my father's lap while he gently but firmly placed me aside, his attention immediately brightening when our male cousin Jason entered the room. Jason was my Uncle Robert's son, only 2 years older than me. As the first male of our generation, he became the recipient of all the love and attention I craved. When we were little, Jason received elaborate gifts on his birthday while I got practical items. He was taken fishing and camping by my father while I was left at home, despite my tearful pleas to join. "This is boy time," my father would explain, rubbing Jason's head affectionately. "You wouldn't enjoy it anyway, but I would have." I would have enjoyed any time with my father. When I was 6, I accidentally overheard a conversation that would haunt me for years. Hidden behind the living room curtains during a family gathering, I heard my father speaking to my uncle. "3 tries and not a single boy," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "The Wilson name will die with me." "You could try again," my uncle suggested. My father sighed. Elizabeth had complications with Cora. The doctors advised against more children. "I guess I'll have to invest in Jason as the future of our family." I didn't fully understand the implications then, but I felt the sting of being considered a failure simply for being born a girl. My relationship with my sisters evolved from this shared experience of conditional love. Sarah, the oldest, at 5 years my senior, became fiercely protective, often intercepting my father's dismissive comments with achievements of her own. Amanda, just 2 years older than me, took a different approach, trying desperately to be the son my father wanted. She excelled in sports, wore boyish clothes, and suppressed any traditionally feminine interests. Neither strategy won our father's approval. Despite the dysfunction in our immediate family, I found solace in my relationship with grandfather James, my mother's father. Unlike the paternal side of the family, he never seemed concerned with my gender. During summer visits to his farmhouse, he taught me to fish, whittle wood, and identify constellations. On my 8th birthday, he gave me a pocket knife, engraved with, "For Cora who can do anything. Don't let anyone tell you what you can and can't do because you're a girl." He told me, his weathered hands clasping mine, "You've got fire in your spirit." That knife became my talisman, a reminder that at least one person in my family believed in me unconditionally. When grandfather James passed away when I was 12, it felt like losing my only champion. At his funeral, I clutched that knife in my pocket while my father comforted everyone else in the family, but seemed to forget I existed. The contrast between my father's devotion to Jason and his indifference toward his daughters became even more pronounced as we grew. At family gatherings, he would proudly announce Jason's accomplishments from his Little League home runs to his mediocre report cards. Meanwhile, Sarah's acceptance into an honors program and Amanda's state championships in track received cursory acknowledgements at best. My own achievements were treated as expected rather than celebrated. When I brought home straight A's, my father's response was typically, "That's nice. Girls usually do well in school." The underlying message was clear: academic achievement was a feminine pursuit and therefore less valuable than any male accomplishment, no matter how minor. Despite everything, there were rare moments of connection with my parents. On my 10th birthday, my father took us all to an amusement park. For one brief day, he seemed present, even riding the carousel with me. My mother captured a photo of us laughing together, my small hand in his. I treasured that photo even as the memories of such moments became increasingly scarce. By the time I turned 11, I had developed a painful awareness that my gender was the root of my family's problems. While other girls my age worried about friendship bracelets and favorite boy bands, I was constructing elaborate strategies to win my father's approval. I threw myself into academics with a fervor that concerned even my teachers. If I couldn't be the son my father wanted, perhaps I could be so exceptional that he would have no choice but to value me. I joined every academic competition, stayed up late, studying, and pushed myself to exhaustion trying to be perfect. In 7th grade, I won the state science fair with a project on renewable energy. The local newspaper featured me on the front page, and my school held a special assembly to recognise the achievement. My parents attended sitting stiffly in the back row. When the principal invited them to the stage to share in the moment, my father declined with a polite smile. That same year, Jason received a C in science, and my father hired him a private tutor, spending hours helping him improve. The disparity was impossible to ignore. Why does Dad care so much about Jason's grades when he barely notices mine? I asked Sarah one night as she braided my hair. She sighed, her fingers pausing. Because Jason's a boy, Cora. In Dad's mind, Jason's future matters more. That's not fair, I whispered, tears threatening. No, it's not, Sarah agreed. But you can't let Dad's issues become yours. You're amazing, and someday everyone will see that, including him. My sisters became my buffer against our parents' favoritism. Sarah, now in high school, would intervene when conversations became uncomfortable, redirecting attention or creating distractions. Amanda would exaggerate her own boyish behavior when she sensed I was feeling particularly vulnerable to our father's criticism. They created a shield around me, but they couldn't be there all the time. When I was 14, my English teacher, Mrs. Harrington, became another source of support. After I submitted an essay about gender expectations, she asked me to stay after class. This is college-level writing, Cora, she said. But I'm concerned about the content. Is everything okay at home? I nearly broke down. Then the weight of years of emotional neglect threatening to spill over. Instead, I assured her everything was fine. But Mrs. Harrington wasn't easily fooled. She gave me advanced reading materials and entered my writing in contests, without telling me, creating opportunities I wouldn't have known to seek for myself. When I won a regional essay competition, she personally drove me to the ceremony when my parents were too busy to attend. Your voice matters, Cora, she told me on the drive back. Never let anyone silence it. High school brought new tensions as I developed a stronger sense of self. I joined the debate team, finding power in articulating ideas and standing my ground. This newfound confidence inevitably led to more direct confrontations at home. The breaking point of my teenage years came when I was 16. At dinner, my father announced that he was taking Jason on a 2-week road trip to visit potential colleges, despite Jason's middling grades. What about me? I asked, my voice stronger than I intended. I'll be looking at colleges next year, and my grades are better. My father barely glanced up from his plate. Your mother can take you to look at the state school. It's good enough for what you'll need. And what exactly will I need, Dad? I challenged, ignoring my mother's warning look. Don't take that tone, he said. Jason needs to get into a good school. He'll have a family to support someday. And I won't, because I'm a girl. The table fell silent. My father put down his fork and looked directly at me for what felt like the first time in years. This is exactly what I mean, he said coldly. This attitude. A proper young woman would understand her place and not question her father's decisions. It's not 1950 anymore. Dad? I shot back. Women can be whatever they want. Not in this house, he replied, his voice dangerously quiet. In this house, we respect tradition and family roles. That night, Sarah found me crying in the bathroom. At 18, she was preparing to leave for college with a scholarship to a school across the country. We both knew her departure would remove a crucial buffer between me and our parents. I can't stay here much longer, I told her, my voice breaking. 2 more years, she promised, wiping my tears. Study hard. Get scholarships like I did, and you can get out too. I'll help you. What if I'm not strong enough? Sarah looked at me with fierce determination. You're the strongest of all of us, Cora. You'll not only survive, you'll thrive. And someday you'll build a life so amazing it will make them realize exactly what they threw away. I held on to that promise through increasingly difficult months. My mother retreated further into passive acceptance of my father's attitudes, while my father's dismissal of my achievements became more open. The only silver lining was that as his disapproval became more explicit, it became easier to recognize it as his failing, not mine. Everything changed during my senior year of high school. After years of academic excellence, perfect test scores, and extracurricular leadership, I was awarded the prestigious National Merit Scholarship and accepted to Columbia University with a financial aid package that would cover most of my expenses. The letter arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. I stood in the kitchen, hands trembling with excitement as I read the acceptance. Despite years of disappointment, some childish part of me still believed this might be the achievement that would finally make my father proud. I waited anxiously for my parents to return from work, the acceptance letter prominently displayed on the dining table. My mother arrived first, offering a tight smile and quick congratulations before changing the subject to dinner plans. When my father walked in an hour later, he glanced at the letter without picking it up. "Columbia," he said, loosening his tie. "That's an expensive school in a dangerous city." "I got a scholarship," I explained eagerly. "Almost everything's covered." He grunted noncommittally. "We'll discuss it later." Later never came. Instead, that Sunday at family dinner, my father made an announcement that shattered any remaining illusions I harbored about my place in the family. "I've been talking with Jason about his future," he declared proudly. "He's interested in starting his own construction business after he graduates, and I've decided to help him. I'm setting aside a significant investment to get him started." The table fell silent. Jason, now 20, looked uncomfortable but pleased. My mother nodded approvingly. "What about Cora's college?" Amanda asked, breaking the awkward silence. At 20, she had opted for community college and still lived at home. My father waved dismissively. "Cora got scholarships. Besides, the money I'm setting aside was always meant for carrying on the family name and business. Jason will do that." Something inside me snapped. Years of quiet acceptance evaporated in an instant. "So that's it?" I asked, my voice unnervingly calm. "I work my entire life to be perfect, get into one of the best universities in the country, and you dismiss it because I don't have the right body parts." "Cora," my mother warned, but I was beyond stopping. No, I want to hear him say it. I continued staring directly at my father. I want to hear him admit that nothing I ever do will be good enough because I was born a girl instead of a boy. My father's face hardened. "You're being dramatic. This isn't about you." "It's always been about me, or rather what I'm not," I countered. "Do you think I didn't notice how you doted on Jason while ignoring your own daughters? How you celebrated his C+ in math while ignoring my academic awards? How you took him camping and fishing while telling me those weren't girl activities?" "That's enough," my father shouted, slamming his hand on the table. The dishes rattled and my mother flinched. "No, it's not enough," I continued, years of hurt pouring out. "I have spent my entire life trying to compensate for the unforgivable sin of being born female. Nothing I've achieved has ever mattered to you. Just admit it. Admit you wished I was never born." The room fell deathly silent. My father's face was flushed with anger, but it was my mother who spoke next, her voice barely above a whisper. "We always wanted a son," she said simply, as if stating that they had preferred chocolate ice cream to vanilla. The casual cruelty of her honesty struck me like a physical blow. "Elizabeth," my father warned, but the damage was done. "I see," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice remained. "Thank you for finally being honest. You don't understand." My father began, his tone softening slightly in what I recognized as his attempt to regain control of the situation. "Family legacy means something. The Wilson name goes back generations, and without a son, so all three of us are worthless." I gestured to include my sisters. Sarah's psychology research, Amanda's athletic achievements, my academic success. None of that counts because we can't pass on your precious name. "That's not what I meant," he backpedaled. "It's exactly what you meant," I said, standing up. "And I'm done trying to earn love that should have been unconditional." My father's expression hardened again. "If you walk out that door, don't expect us to fund this university fantasy of yours. You'll be on your own." I looked at him, suddenly seeing with perfect clarity the smallness of the man I had spent my life trying to please. "I've always been on my own," I replied. "The only difference now is that I know it." I walked upstairs with as much dignity as I could muster, pulled out the suitcase I'd already packed for college, and began filling it with my most essential belongings. Tears threatened, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet, not here. Amanda appeared in my doorway, her face streaked with tears. You don't have to go right now. He'll calm down. Yes, I do, I said, continuing to pack. Nothing will change if I stay. Sarah called as I was zipping my suitcase, having received frantic texts from Amanda. Cora, where will you go? You can't just leave with nowhere to stay. I'll figure it out, I assured her, though I had no plan beyond escaping the suffocating weight of my parents' disappointment. As I dragged my suitcase downstairs, my father stood at the bottom, arms crossed. If you leave now, don't come back, he said, his ultimatum hanging in the air between us. I walked past him without a word, the pocket knife from Grandfather James heavy in my jacket. My mother watched from the living room doorway, her face unreadable. Neither moved to stop me as I walked out the front door of my childhood home for the last time. That night, I slept in my car in a Walmart parking lot, too proud to call Sarah and admit I had nowhere to go. As tears finally came, I wondered if freedom was supposed to feel so much like falling. The first month after leaving home was the hardest of my life. With 3 months until college would start, I had to find both shelter and income immediately. My car, an old Honda Civic that had been Sarah's before she left for college, became my temporary home. I showered at a 24-hour gym, using a free trial membership, kept my clothes in the trunk, and parked in different lots each night to avoid attention. My first job was at a diner near the highway, working the overnight shift. The manager, a gruff woman named Darlene, didn't ask too many questions when I showed up looking desperate for work. The hours were brutal, the pay minimal, but it was a start. You sleeping in that car, aren't you? Darlene asked about 2 weeks in, catching me changing clothes in the employee bathroom. I froze, afraid I'd lose my job if I admitted it. My niece did the same thing when she left home. Darlene continued without waiting for my response. You can crash on my couch until you figure things out. It's not charity. You can help with groceries and cleaning. That was my first lesson in the kindness of strangers. Darlene's cramped one-bedroom apartment became my temporary refuge. She never pried into my story, but offered practical advice about budgeting and finding better employment. Under her guidance, I secured a second job at a bookstore and saved every penny I could. By the time August arrived, I had enough saved for the train ticket to New York and expenses not covered by my scholarship and financial aid. I'd also learnt valuable lessons about self-reliance that my sheltered upbringing had never taught me. Columbia University was both exhilarating and overwhelming. My roommate Talia came from a wealthy Manhattan family with parents who called daily and sent care packages weekly. Her casual references to family vacations and parental support highlighted everything I lacked, but I never let on. I fabricated a sanitized version of my family situation, claiming they were supportive, but unable to visit due to work commitments. The reality was that I hadn't spoken to either of my parents since the night I left. Amanda called occasionally, providing awkward updates while carefully avoiding any mention of my absence at family events. Sarah, now in graduate school across the country, checked in more frequently, becoming my emotional anchor during those lonely first months. College was also where I met Professor Margaret Winters, who would become the most influential person in my adult life. As my academic advisor, she initially took an interest in me because of my exceptional work in her economics class. When she learned I was spending Thanksgiving break alone in the dorms, she invited me to dinner with her family. No one should be alone on Thanksgiving, she insisted in a tone that brooked no argument. That dinner with Margaret, her husband David, and their 2 teenage sons was my first experience of what a healthy family could look like. Their genuine interest in each other's lives, the respectful disagreements, the easy laughter, all of it was foreign to me. When Margaret's sons debated politics with their mother, she engaged them as equals, rather than shutting them down as my father would have done. You're welcome here any time, Margaret told me as I was leaving. I mean that. Over the next 4 years, Margaret became the mentor I desperately needed. She helped me secure research positions, introduced me to her network in finance, and provided the motherly guidance I had never received. When I confided in her about my family situation, she didn't offer empty platitudes. What they did was wrong, she said firmly. Their failure to love you properly is their loss, not a reflection of your worth. Those words became my mantra during the hardest times. College was also where I discovered my talent for finance and investment. Numbers made sense to me in a way people often didn't. The clarity of balance sheets and projections provided a comforting order that had been missing from my emotional life. I graduated summa cum laude with multiple job offers, ultimately accepting a position at a prestigious investment firm in New York. My career progression was rapid. By 25, I had been promoted twice and was managing my own small team. My personal financial situation transformed from precarious to comfortable to affluent. I purchased my first apartment, a modest one-bedroom in Brooklyn, that nevertheless represented security I had never known growing up. Through it all, I built a chosen family of friends who knew my full story and loved me unconditionally. My roommate from college, Talia, remained my closest friend despite our different backgrounds. We celebrated holidays together, traveled when we could afford it, and supported each other through career highs and relationship lows. Despite external success, healing from my childhood wounds was a slower, more painful process. At Margaret's gentle insistence, I began therapy at 23, finally confronting the deep-seated belief that I was somehow fundamentally unlovable. Your parents' inability to value you wasn't about you, my therapist Dr. Lena reminded me in session after session. It was about their own limitations. Intellectually, I understood this. Emotionally, acceptance came in waves, some days stronger than others. Throughout these years, my contact with my family remained minimal. Sarah had moved to California for a research position and rarely returned home. Amanda eventually moved out of our parents' house, but stayed in the same town, caught in the orbit of their expectations while trying to establish her own identity. Occasionally, Amanda would share family news, Dad's promotion, Mum's garden winning a local contest, Cousin Jason's construction business struggling despite my father's investment. I listened without comment, the names feeling increasingly like characters from a book I had once read, rather than people who had shaped my early life. The most surprising update came when I was 26. They tell everyone you abandoned the family, Amanda confided during one of our infrequent calls. Dad says you were ungrateful for all they sacrificed for you. I laughed, a short, bitter sound that surprised us both. Is that what they believe, or what they tell others? I think they've told the story so many times they believe it now, Amanda replied softly. It's easier than admitting the truth. That revelation marked a turning point in my healing. The realization that my parents had constructed a narrative where they were the victims freed me from seeking their acknowledgement. I couldn't change their story, but I could fully embrace my own. By 28, I had established myself as one of the youngest senior financial advisors at my firm. I had a beautiful apartment, a circle of loyal friends, meaningful work and financial security. The ache of my childhood had dulled to an occasional pang rather than a constant presence. I had built a life that was by any objective measure successful. Yet despite everything, a small part of me still wondered if they ever regretted what they had done, if they ever thought about the daughter they had thrown away like she was nothing. I never expected to find out. Then the invitation arrived. The cream-coloured envelope with embossed lettering seemed innocuous enough when I retrieved it from my mailbox. Opening it revealed an invitation to Cousin Jason's wedding, scheduled for June at an upscale venue in my hometown. I stared at it in disbelief. After 10 years of silence, this formal invitation felt surreal. A handwritten note was tucked inside. Cora, I know it's been a long time. I've always regretted not staying in touch after everything happened. It would mean a lot to have you there. Jason. Mixed emotions flooded through me. Jason had never been unkind to me, had even seemed uncomfortable with the preferential treatment he received. His business, I knew from Amanda, had survived its rocky start and was now moderately successful. Still attending meant facing my parents again after a decade of silence. I called Sarah immediately. Did you get an invitation to Jason's wedding? Yes, she confirmed. I'm considering going. Amanda says Mum and Dad will be there, obviously. I don't think I can face them, I admitted. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Maybe it's time, Cor. Not for them, but for you. Closure. What closure? They've never even acknowledged what they did. Exactly. And they probably never will. But seeing them again as the successful woman you've become might help you finally put it behind you. I mulled it over for days, discussing it with Dr. Lena and Margaret. Finally, I decided Sarah was right. I would attend not seeking reconciliation, but to face my past from a position of strength. The weeks leading up to the wedding were filled with anxiety. I obsessed over my appearance, wanting to project confidence and success. I bought a designer dress in deep blue that was elegant without being flashy, had my hair professionally styled, and prepared mentally for every possible scenario of seeing my parents again. When the day arrived, I flew into my hometown airport with Sarah, who had arranged her schedule to travel with me for moral support. We checked into a hotel rather than staying with family, creating a safe retreat if things became overwhelming. Ready? Sarah asked as our taxi pulled up to the vineyard, where the ceremony would be held. As I'll ever be, I replied, smoothing my dress with trembling hands. The ceremony location was beautiful, with rows of white chairs facing an arch covered in flowers, vineyards stretching into the distance behind it. As we found seats near the back, I scanned the gathering crowd for familiar faces, while trying not to be obvious about it. "They're not here yet," Sarah murmured, understanding, without words, who I was looking for. The ceremony was lovely and mercifully brief. Jason looked happy standing beside his bride Lauren, a woman I had never met but who seemed genuinely sweet during their vows. I found myself smiling despite my anxiety, glad that at least one person from my childhood had found happiness. The reception was held in a renovated barn on the vineyard property, decorated with twinkling lights and floral arrangements. As guests mingled during the cocktail hour, I stayed close to Sarah, accepting congratulations from distant relatives who seemed surprised to see me. "Cora Wilson, my goodness, it's been years. You look so sophisticated. New York must agree with you. We've heard you're doing so well in finance." Each interaction reinforced the strangeness of returning to a world where I was defined by my absence. People seemed to know fragments of my life filtered through whatever family gossip had circulated in the years since I'd left. I was at the bar getting a glass of champagne when I first saw them. My parents entered the reception area together, looking older but fundamentally unchanged. My father's hair had greyed at the temples, and my mother seemed thinner, more fragile somehow. They moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations for their nephew's beautiful wedding, as if taking partial credit. "You okay?" Sarah appeared at my elbow, having spotted them too. "Yes," I said, surprised to find it was true. The sight of them triggered less emotion than I had anticipated. They seemed smaller somehow, less intimidating than the giants who had loomed over my childhood. Throughout dinner, I managed to avoid direct interaction, seated at a table with Sarah and cousins from my mother's side, who were more interested in hearing about life in New York than discussing family drama. I was beginning to think I might escape the event without confrontation when Jason approached our table. "Cora, Sarah, thank you both for coming," he said, genuine warmth in his voice. "It means a lot." "Congratulations," I replied, standing to hug him briefly. "Lauren seems wonderful." "She is," he agreed, then lowered his voice. "Listen, I want to apologize for everything. I knew it wasn't right how they treated you." His sincerity caught me off guard. "It wasn't your fault, Jason." "Maybe not, but I benefited from it," he admitted. "I should have said something. We were kids," I said, finding forgiveness I hadn't known I was capable of. "You didn't create the situation." Jason smiled, relief evident in his expression. "Would you mind saying hello to Lauren's parents? They're in finance too, and when I mentioned what you do, they were impressed." I agreed, following Jason to meet his in-laws' successful business owners who were indeed interested in my career. The conversation was going well when I felt a presence at my back. Turning slightly, I found myself face to face with my father for the first time in a decade. "Cora," he said, his voice betraying no emotion. "You came." "I did," I replied, simply maintaining my composure, though my heart raced. My mother appeared at his side, her eyes darting between us anxiously. "You look well," she offered, her gaze taking in my designer dress and carefully styled appearance. "Thank you. So do you both." The polite words felt foreign in my mouth. An awkward silence descended until Jason's father-in-law excused himself, clearly sensing tension. "Perhaps we could speak privately," my father suggested, gesturing toward the patio doors leading outside. Every instinct told me to refuse to maintain the distance I had carefully constructed over 10 years. But a stronger part of me, the part that had survived and thrived despite their rejection, wanted to face this final demon. "All right," I agreed. We stepped onto the patio, the summer evening warm around us. Distant music from the reception created a surreal backdrop for this long-delayed confrontation. "We heard you've done well for yourself," my father began, an odd note of pride in his voice that felt wildly inappropriate. I confirmed without elaboration. "Your sister tells us you're some kind of investment expert now," my mother added. "Senior financial advisor," I corrected. "I manage investment portfolios for high net worth clients." My father nodded as if this confirmed something for him. Always were good with numbers. The casual comment, as if he had been following my progress with paternal interest, rather than casting me out, ignited a flash of anger I quickly suppressed. "Why did you want to speak with me?" I asked directly. They exchanged a glance that immediately put me on alert. I recognized that look from childhood, the silent communication that usually preceded some unwelcome announcement. We thought perhaps it was time to put the past behind us, my father said carefully. Family disagreements shouldn't last forever. Disagreements? I repeated, incredulous. Is that what you call disowning your daughter for being born female? You're exaggerating what happened. My father dismissed with a wave of his hand. You were always so dramatic. Before I could respond to this breathtaking revision of history, my mother spoke, her voice taking on the placating tone I remembered from childhood disputes. What your father means is that we all said things we regret. We've missed you, Cora. Meg. The words might have moved me once in the years when I still lay awake at night wondering if they ever thought of me. Now I merely waited, certain there was more coming. The thing is, my father continued, lowering his voice, there's been a situation with the wedding. What kind of situation? But I asked, though I was beginning to suspect where this was heading. Financial, he admitted. Jason's business had a setback this year. The wedding was already planned, deposits paid. His fiancé's family contributed, but there's still a significant shortfall. And twice, I prompted, my voice neutral. We thought since you've done so well for yourself, you might want to help out. For Jason, for family. There it was. After 10 years of silence, they hadn't approached me out of remorse or love, but because they wanted my money. I almost laughed at the predictability of it all. Let me understand this, I said slowly. You disowned me, told me never to come back, haven't contacted me in 10 years, and now you're asking me to pay for Jason's wedding. Not the whole thing, my mother hastened to add, as if this clarification improved their request. Just help with the final costs, around $30,000. The casual way she named the sum as if it were pocket change rather than more than most people in my hometown, made in a year, revealed how much they had mythologized my success. Why would I do that? I asked simply. My father's expression hardened, the mask of reconciliation slipping. Because despite everything, we're still your family. Family helps family. Family helps family, I repeated slowly. Where was that sentiment when I was sleeping in my car after you threw me out? You chose to leave. My father countered the familiar distortion of reality I remembered from childhood. And you did fine, my mother added, apparently thinking this helped their case. Look how successful you became. Our approach made you independent, strong. Are you actually claiming credit for my success? The absurdity of it struck me like a physical blow. Tough love has its place, my father said with maddening self-righteousness. You needed to find your own path. I studied their faces, looking for any sign of self-awareness or genuine remorse. Finding none, I finally understood that nothing had changed. They were the same people who had valued me only for what I could provide or represent. The only difference was that now, instead of wanting a son, they wanted my money. We've already told the family you'd be covering it, my mother admitted quietly. It would be embarrassing to go back on that now. That final manipulation crystallized everything. They had announced my financial contribution without even speaking to me, counting on social pressure and family embarrassment to force my compliance. In that moment, standing on a patio under stars that had witnessed my departure a decade earlier, I felt the last threads of attachment to these people finally snap. Whatever response I gave now would be for me, not them. I stood there in silence for a long moment, looking at the two people who had brought me into this world but had never truly seen me. The realization washed over me with surprising calm. I was completely free of any desire for their approval or love. That little girl, desperate for her father's attention, that teenager hurt by her mother's passivity, they were finally at peace. No, I said simply. No, my father echoed, as if the concept was foreign to him. I won't be paying for Jason's wedding or anything else. My father's expression darkened. After everything we did for you? I couldn't help but laugh, a genuine sound that seemed to startle them. What exactly did you do for me? Provide the bare minimum care legally required while making it clear daily that my existence was a disappointment. Make me feel worthless because I wasn't born male. Disown me when I finally stood up for myself. We gave you a home and education, my mother began defensively. A home where I was treated as less than, and an education you tried to deny me when I got into Columbia, I corrected. The best things in my life came after I left you behind. My father squared his shoulders, reverting to the intimidation tactics that had worked when I was a child. So this is how you repay family loyalty with selfishness. Family loyalty? I repeated, incredulous. Where was your loyalty when you invested in Jason's business while refusing to help with my college expenses? Where was your loyalty during the 10 years you never once called to see if I was alive or dead? My mother's eyes filled with tears, but I recognized the manipulation for what it was. We made mistakes, she said softly. All parents do. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive? Forgiveness requires acknowledgement and remorse. I replied, surprising myself with the clarity of my thoughts. You haven't acknowledged what you did, let alone expressed genuine remorse. You're only here because you want something from me. That's not true, my father protested, but the lie was transparent. I took a deep breath, knowing what I needed to say next. I'm going back inside now. I'll be making a speech. A speech? My mother looked alarmed. Cora, please don't make a scene. This is Jason's wedding. I'm not going to make a scene, I assured her. But I am going to speak my truth just once. After that, you'll never have to worry about me embarrassing the family again. I walked away before they could respond, feeling strangely light. Inside, I found the wedding coordinator and asked if I could make a brief toast. Surprised but accommodating, she added me to the schedule after the best man speech. When the time came, I approached the microphone with steady steps. The room quieted, curious about what the long-absent cousin might have to say. I spotted my parents at the back of the room, my father's face tight with apprehension, my mother nervously twisting her napkin. For those who don't know me, I'm Cora Wilson, Jason's cousin. Many of you haven't seen me in 10 years since I left town under difficult circumstances. The room was completely silent now, the kind of hushed attention that comes when people sense they're about to witness something unprecedented. I want to start by congratulating Jason and Lauren. Your vows today were beautiful, and the love between you is evident to everyone in this room. Jason smiled his arm around his new wife. I continued, my voice growing stronger. When I received Jason's invitation, I hesitated to come. The last time I saw many of you, I was 18 and had just been told by my parents that I would never be as valuable as a son would have been, that my academic achievements meant nothing compared to the family name I couldn't carry forward. A ripple of discomfort moved through the crowd. Some guests looked down at their plates, while others glanced surreptitiously toward my parents. I left that night with a suitcase and nowhere to go. I slept in my car, worked overnight shifts at a diner, and eventually made my way to college and built a life for myself. I paused, making eye contact with various relatives who had never known the truth. I'm not sharing this to embarrass anyone or to cast a shadow on this beautiful celebration. I'm sharing it because today, after a decade of silence, my parents asked me to pay for this wedding. Not because they've changed or because they value me now, but because they heard I've become successful. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. My father started forward, but my Uncle Robert placed a restraining hand on his arm. My answer was no, but I am offering a different gift today. I turned to face Jason and Lauren directly. To you both, I offer the gift of truth. Build your marriage on honesty and equal partnership. Never make your children feel that their value depends on their gender or their ability to fulfill your expectations. Love them for who they are, not who you wish they were. Tears glistened in Lauren's eyes, and Jason nodded solemnly. To my extended family, I offer forgiveness. Many of you witnessed my childhood treatment and said nothing. Perhaps you didn't know what to do, or perhaps you shared the same values. Either way, I release any resentment I carried. I took a deep breath for the hardest part. And to my parents, I offer freedom. Freedom from any obligation you might feel toward the daughter you rejected. I don't want your apologies or explanations. I've built a beautiful life filled with chosen family who love me unconditionally. You are welcome to live yours without the burden of my expectations. The room was utterly silent. I raised my glass. To Jason and Lauren, may your home be filled with unconditional love for each other and for any children you may have. May they always know their worth isn't determined by their gender or their achievements, but by their existence as unique, irreplaceable human beings. As I finished speaking, the silence held for a moment before my Aunt Julia, my mother's sister, began to applaud. Others joined the sound swelling until most of the room was applauding. Some guests wiped tears from their eyes, while others looked contemplative, perhaps reflecting on their own family dynamics. My father remained frozen, his face unreadable. My mother had buried her face in her hands, but their reactions no longer mattered to me. I had spoken my truth without anger or vengeance, simply stating facts that had shaped my life. After the toast, I returned to my seat beside Sarah, who squeezed my hand in silent support. What I hadn't expected was the line of relatives who approached me throughout the evening, offering quiet apologies, sharing their own stories of family dysfunction, or simply expressing admiration for the woman I had become. My cousin Jason found me as the evening was winding down. "Thank you," he said simply. "Your speech was the best gift we received today." "You mean you don't want the blender I got you?" I joked, trying to lighten the moment. He laughed, then grew serious. "I always felt guilty about how they treated you, about being the son they wanted instead of their actual children." "It wasn't your fault, Jason. We were all caught in their narrative." He nodded thoughtfully. "Lauren and I want children someday. I promise you we'll do better." "I know you will," I said, and meant it. As the reception ended, I saw my parents slipping out early, avoiding further interaction. I felt no triumph in their discomfort, only a quiet sadness for what could have been. But that sadness was no longer overwhelming or defining. It was simply one thread in the complex tapestry of my life. Sarah and I returned to our hotel emotionally exhausted, but strangely peaceful. "You were magnificent," she told me as we kicked off our heels and collapsed onto our respective beds. "I didn't plan any of that," I admitted. "It just felt like the right time to tell the truth." "The best part was Aunt Julia starting the applause." Sarah grinned. "She always said Dad was full of himself." We laughed together, the kind of deep cleansing laughter that marks a watershed moment. Whatever happened next, the silence had been broken. The family secrets were secrets no more. The aftermath of the wedding brought unexpected developments. Some relatives reached out to rebuild connections, now knowing the full story. Others, loyal to my parents, maintained their distance. I welcomed the former without resenting the latter, understanding that family systems are complex and deeply rooted. My parents made no attempt to contact me directly, but Amanda reported that my speech had created significant ripples. My father maintained that I had ambushed them and ruined Jason's wedding, while my mother had begun questioning privately to Amanda whether they had indeed been wrong all those years ago. 6 months after the wedding, I established the Wilson Girls Foundation, a non-profit providing scholarships and support to young women from traditional families pursuing higher education. Sarah joined the board, and to our surprise, so did Amanda, finally taking a definitive stand. The foundation became my way of transforming pain into purpose. Each young woman we helped represented a potential that might otherwise have been stifled by outdated beliefs about gender and worth. Their success stories became part of my healing. 1 year after the wedding, I received an unexpected letter from my mother sent to my office address. It was brief, just a few lines acknowledging that she had failed me as a mother and expressing regret without asking for forgiveness. It wasn't the dramatic reconciliation of movie endings, but it was a small crack in the wall of denial they had built. I didn't respond immediately, taking time to process her words with my therapist. Eventually, I sent a short note thanking her for the acknowledgement. We were not mother and daughter in any meaningful sense anymore, but perhaps we could be distant acquaintances who once shared a home. My father never reached out, his pride apparently undiminished. I had expected nothing else, and found I could accept this reality with equanimity. The little girl desperate for his approval was gone, replaced by a woman who understood her value came from within, not from his recognition. The greatest gift of that wedding day wasn't confronting my parents, or even speaking my truth to the extended family. It was the final release from the weight of unworthiness I had carried since childhood. In refusing to fund the wedding, I had affirmed that I would no longer participate in a system that had devalued me from birth. Today, I'm 30, heading a department at my firm and watching the foundation grow beyond my initial vision. My chosen family has expanded to include colleagues, foundation volunteers, and the scholarship recipients who have become like younger sisters to me. I date occasionally, but remain selective about who I allow into my inner circle, prioritizing authentic connection over traditional relationship milestones. The pocket knife from Grandfather James still sits on my desk, a reminder that there was always someone who believed in me before I learned to believe in myself. Beside it stands a framed photo of my first scholarship recipient at her college graduation, her face alight with the kind of joy that comes from being valued for exactly who you are. Perhaps the most profound lesson from my journey is that family is not defined by blood or obligation, but by love and acceptance. The people who show up, who see us clearly and love us anyway, those are our true family. Sometimes they share our DNA, often they don't. What matters is the choice to remain present through both struggle and triumph. For those watching who have experienced similar family rejection or conditional love, I want you to know that your worth was never dependent on their ability to see it. You can build a life rich with meaning and connection even when those who should have loved you unconditionally failed to do so. What was your experience with family expectations? Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against those who should have supported you, leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of healing and self-discovery. Thank you for witnessing my truth today. Remember, sometimes the family we create matters more than the family we were born into.